Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of Saturday with the Saints. This week, I will be telling you about Saint Anthony of Padua, or also known as Saint Anthony of Lisbon. So let's begin. Saint Anthony was born Fernando Martins in 1195 in Lisbon, Portugal. His parents, Martin and Mary Bulham, apparently belonged to one of the prominent families of the city. At the age of 15, he entered the religious order of St. Augustine. Monastery life was hardly peaceful for young Fernando, nor conducive to prayer and study, as his old friends came to visit frequently and engaged in vehement political discussions. After 2 years, he was sent to Coimbra. There he began 9 years of intense study, learning the Augustinian theology that he would later combine with the Franciscan vision. Fernando was probably ordained a priest during this time, we're not sure. The life of the young priest took a crucial turn when the bodies of the first 5 Franciscan martyrs were returned from Morocco. They had preached in the mosque in Seville, almost being martyred at the outset, but the Sultan allowed them to pass on to Morocco, where, after continuing to preach Christ despite repeated warnings, they were tortured and beheaded. Now, in the presence of the Queen and a huge crowd, their remains were carried in solemn procession to Fernando's monastery. He was overjoyed and inspired to be a part of this momentous occasion. He went to the little friary in Coimbra and said, "Brother, I would gladly put on the habit of your order if you would promise to send me as soon as possible to the land of the Saracens, that I may gain the crown of the holy martyrs." After some challenges from the prior of the Augustinians, he was allowed to leave that priory and receive the Franciscan habit, taking the name Anthony. True to their promise, the Franciscans allowed Anthony to go to Morocco to be a witness for Christ and a martyr as well. But, as often happens, the gift he wanted to give was not the gift that was to be asked of him. He became severely ill, and after several months, realized he had to go home. However, he never arrived. His ship ran into storms and high winds and was blown east across the Mediterranean. Months later, he arrived on the east coast of Sicily. The friars at nearby Messina, though they didn't know him, welcomed him and began nursing him back to health. Still ailing, he wanted to attend the great Pentecost chapter of mats, so called because the 3,000 friars could not be housed and slept on mats. Francis was there, also sick. History does not reveal any meeting between Francis and Anthony at that time. Since the young man was from out of town, he received no assignment at the meeting, so he asked to go with the provincial superior from northern Italy. "Instruct me in the Franciscan life," he said, not mentioning his prior theological training. Now, like Francis, he had a choice: a life of seclusion and contemplation in a hermitage near Monte Palo. Perhaps we would never have heard of Anthony if he hadn't gone to an ordination of Dominicans and Franciscans in 1222. As they gathered for a meal afterward, the provincial suggested that one of the friars give a short sermon. Quite typically, everybody ducked. So Anthony was asked to just give something simple, since he presumably had no education whatsoever. Anthony, too, demurred, was like, no, but finally began to speak in a simple, artless way. The fire within him became evident, and his knowledge was unmistakable. But his holiness was what really impressed everyone there. Now his secret was exposed. His quiet life of prayer and penance at the hermitage was exchanged for that of a public preacher. Francis heard of Anthony's previously hidden gifts, and Anthony was assigned to preach in northern Italy. The problem with many preachers in Anthony's day was that their lifestyle contrasted sharply with that of the poor people to whom they preached. Anthony saw that words were obviously not enough. He had to show the gospel poverty, and he wanted people to be the people wanted him to be more self-disciplined and even wanted more penitent priests. And they wanted genuineness of the gospel and living, and when Anthony came, they found it in him. They were moved by who he was more than what he said. Despite his efforts, not everyone listened. Legend has it that one day, faced with deaf ears, Anthony went to the river and preached to the fishes. That, reads the traditional tale, got everyone's attention. Anthony traveled tirelessly to both northern Italy and southern France, perhaps maybe about 400 trips, choosing to enter the cities where the heretics were strongest. Yet the sermons he has left behind rarely show him taking direct issue with the heretics. As the historian Clayson interprets it, Anthony preferred to present the grandeur of Christianity in positive ways. It was no good to prove people wrong. Anthony wanted to win them to the right, the healthiness of real sorrow and conversion, the wonder of reconciliation with a loving Father. Anthony's superior, St. Francis, was cautious about education such as his protege possessed. He had seen too many theologians taking pride in their sophisticated knowledge. Still, if the friars had to hit the roads and preach to all sorts of people, they needed a firm grounding in scripture and theology. So, when he heard the glowing report of Anthony's debut at the ordinations, Francis wrote in 1224, "It pleases me that you should teach the friars sacred theology, provided that in such studies they do not destroy the spirit of holy prayer and devotedness, as contained in the rule." Anthony first taught in a friary in Bologna, which became a famous school. The theology book of the time was the Bible. In one extant sermon by the saint, there are at least 183 scripture passages from Scripture. While none of his theological conferences and discussions were written down, we do have 2 volumes of his sermons, Sunday sermons and feast day sermons. His method included the use of allegory and symbolic explanation of Scripture. Anthony continued to preach as he taught the friars and assumed more responsibility within the order. In 1226, he was appointed provincial superior of northern Italy, but still found time for contemplative prayer in a small hermitage. Around Easter in 1228, he was only 33 years old. While in Rome, he met Pope Gregory IX, who had been a faithful friend and advisor of St. Francis. Naturally, the famous preacher was invited to speak. He did it humbly, as always. The response was so great that people later said that it seemed the miracle of Pentecost was repeated. Padua, Italy, is a short distance west of Venice. At the time of Anthony, it was one of the most important cities in the country, with an important university for the study of civil and canon law. Sometimes Anthony left Padua for greater solitude. He went to a place loved by Francis, Laverna, where Francis received the wounds of Jesus. He also found a grotto near the friary where he could pray in solitude. In poor health and still provincial superior of northern Italy, he went to the general chapter in Rome and asked to be relieved of his duties. But he was later recalled as part of a special commission to discuss certain matters of the Franciscan rule with the Pope. Back in Padua, he preached his last and most famous Lenten sermons. The crowds were so great, sometimes 30,000, that the churches could not hold them, so he went into piazzas or the open fields. People waited all night to hear him. He needed a bodyguard to protect him from the people armed with scissors who wanted to snip off a piece of his habit as a relic. After his morning mass and sermon, he would hear confessions. This sometimes lasted all day, as did his fasting. The great energy he had expended during the Lent of 1231 left him exhausted. He went to a little town near Padua, but seeing death come close, he return to the city that he loved. The journey in a wagon weakened him so much, however, that he had to stop at Arcella. He had to bless Padua from a distance, as Francis had blessed Assisi. At Arcella, he received the last sacraments, sang and prayed with the friars there. When one of them asked Anthony what he was staring at so intently, he answered, "I see my Lord." He died in peace a short time after that. He was only 36 and had been a Franciscan but 10 years. The following year, his friend, Pope Gregory IX, moved by many miracles that occurred at Anthony's tomb, declared him a saint. Anthony was a simple and humble friar who preached the good news lovingly and with fearless courage. The youth whom his fellow friars thought was uneducated became one of the greatest preachers and theologians of his day. He was a man of great penance and apostolic zeal, but he was primarily a saint of the people. The reason for invoking St. Anthony's help in finding lost or stolen things is traced back to an incident in his own life. As the story goes, Anthony had a book of Psalms that was very important to him. Besides the value of any book before the invention of printing, the Psalter had the notes and comments he had made to use in teaching students in his Franciscan order. A novice who had already grown tired of living religious life decided to depart the community. Besides going AWOL, he also took Anthony's Psalter. Upon realizing his Psalter was missing, Anthony prayed it would be found or returned to him. And after his prayer, the thieving novice was moved to return the Psalter to Anthony and to return to the order, which accepted him back. Legend has embroidered this story a little bit. Has the novice stopped in his flight by a horrible devil brandishing an axe and threatening to